Imagine standing in a crowded square in Paris on a cold October morning. The year is 1793. Thousands of people have gathered, their eyes fixed on a wooden platform. At the center stands a woman who was once the Queen of France, dressed in a simple white gown, her hair shorn short. This is Marie Antoinette, the most glamorous and controversial figure of her time, now moments away from her death. As she steps forward, she accidentally treads on the foot of her executioner and quietly says, "Pardon me, sir, I meant not to do it." Those are her last words. How did it come to this? How did a young woman, once adored for her beauty and charm, become a symbol of everything the French Revolution wanted to destroy? Why did the people who cheered for her as a bride, now scream for her head? Marie Antoinette's story is one of power, privilege, and unimaginable luxury, but also scandal, betrayal, and revolution. From a teenage Austrian princess sent to seal an alliance to a queen whose lavish lifestyle made her the enemy of her own people, her every decision became ammunition in the growing resentment toward the monarchy. At the heart of her downfall lies not just her actions, but the larger forces at play: an economic crisis, a hungry and angry population, and a revolution that sought to dismantle centuries of royal rule. Her journey from palace to being executed wasn't just personal, it mirrored the fall of the monarchy itself. It was a dramatic, unstoppable chain of events that changed France, and the world, forever. Let's uncover how a queen's choices, and the choices made for her, set the stage for one of history's most infamous downfalls. Marie Antoinette was born in 1755, into one of the most powerful families in Europe. She was the daughter of Empress Maria Theresa of Austria, a woman who ruled with strength and ambition. As the youngest of 16 children, Marie grew up surrounded by wealth, music, and culture in the grand courts of Vienna. But her life was never truly her own. Even as a child, her future was decided for her. At just 14 years old, Marie was sent to France to marry the Dauphin, Louis, the future king. This wasn't a love story, it was a political move, a way to strengthen the bond between Austria and France. Imagine leaving everything you've ever known, your family, your home, your language, and stepping into the grandeur of Versailles, a place unlike anything she'd ever seen. At first, the French court was enchanted by her. She was young, beautiful, and full of life. She brought a sense of fun to the stiff and formal atmosphere of Versailles. But not everyone was charmed. To many, she was simply the Austrian woman, a foreigner they didn't trust. Whispers began to spread. Could she be loyal to France? Or was her heart still in Austria? What started as quiet suspicion would grow into something much larger. As the years went on, this label, the Austrian woman, would follow her, fueling anger and resentment. But for now, she was just a teenager, trying to find her place in a strange and dazzling new world. How did a young girl, full of promise, become the most hated figure in France? That's a question we'll keep coming back to as her story unfolds. When Marie Antoinette became Queen of France, she stepped into a world of unimaginable luxury. Versailles wasn't just a palace, it was a symbol of absolute power and opulence. Gold-lined walls, sprawling gardens, and endless halls filled with art and mirrors. As queen, Marie had access to all of it, and she embraced the life completely. She was known for her love of fashion. Her dresses were extravagant, often costing more than most people earned in a lifetime. She wore towering hairstyles decorated with jewels, feathers, and sometimes even miniature ships. She was always the center of attention, setting trends that everyone at court tried to follow. But this wasn't just about style, it was her way of standing out, of carving her identity in a foreign court where she always felt like an outsider. Marie also had a private retreat away from the grandeur of Versailles, the Petit Trianon. Here, she hosted exclusive parties with only her closest friends. She played games, gambled, and even dressed in simpler outfits, pretending to be a shepherdess in her artificial village. To her, it was an escape from the pressures of royal life. To the French people, it looked like she was mocking their struggles. Outside the palace, things weren't so glamorous. France was facing a financial crisis. Harvests had failed, bread prices were rising, and people were hungry. They looked to the monarchy for answers, but all they saw was a queen spending fortunes on jewels and parties. Pamphlets and gossip began circulating, calling her Madame Deficit. They accused her of bankrupting France, even though the real problem was decades of bad policies and debt from wars. The more the people suffered, the more they blamed her. She became a symbol of everything wrong with the monarchy, a foreign queen who cared more about herself than the country she ruled. Whether the accusations were fair or not didn't matter. Public perception was turning against her, and the anger was growing louder. What started as whispers of discontent was now a roar of resentment. This image of Marie Antoinette, the extravagant queen who ignored her people's pain, laid the foundation for her eventual downfall. But the truth was more complicated, and the events that followed would push her life toward tragedy. In 1785, a scandal erupted that shook France and forever tarnished Marie Antoinette's reputation. It began with a diamond necklace, a necklace so extravagant it seemed like something out of a fairy tale. Crafted by the most skilled jewelers, it was said to be worth a fortune, a piece fit for a queen. But what started as a simple misunderstanding would spiral into a public relations disaster for Marie Antoinette. Here's what happened: a con artist named Jeanne de la Motte had a scheme. She convinced Cardinal de Rohan, a man desperate to regain favor at court, that Marie Antoinette secretly wanted to buy the necklace. Jeanne forged letters, pretending they were from the Queen, and even staged a meeting with an actress dressed as Marie. Believing he was acting on the Queen's behalf, the Cardinal arranged to purchase the necklace. But when the jewelers demanded payment from the royal family, the truth came out. Marie Antoinette had never wanted the necklace. She had nothing to do with the plot. Still, the damage was done. To the public, it didn't matter whether she was guilty or not. They were already suspicious of her extravagant lifestyle, and this scandal seemed to confirm their worst fears. The Queen was painted as greedy, deceitful, and completely out of touch with the struggles of the people. The timing couldn't have been worse. France was already on the brink of financial collapse, and people were desperate for someone to blame. Satirical pamphlets and caricatures flooded the streets, showing Marie Antoinette as a scheming villain. They exaggerated her spending, mocked her character, and even questioned her morality. To the public, the Austrian woman wasn't just out of touch, she was the enemy. This scandal became more than just a story about a necklace. It was a turning point, solidifying the growing hatred for Marie Antoinette. The Queen, who once symbolized glamour and elegance, was now a scapegoat for all of France's problems. But the real storm was just beginning. With her reputation in ruins, the stage was set for her eventual downfall. The revolution was coming, and Marie Antoinette was at the center of it all. By the late 1780s, France was falling apart. The country was drowning in debt, the people were starving, and the government seemed powerless to fix it. Bread, the most basic food, had become so expensive that families couldn't afford to eat. Hungry and angry, the people of France demanded change. They were tired of paying high taxes while the nobility and clergy lived in luxury, untouched by the struggles of ordinary citizens. Calls for reform grew louder, and tensions reached a breaking point in 1789. On July 14th, the people of Paris stormed the Bastille, a fortress prison that had come to symbolize royal oppression. It wasn't just about freeing prisoners, it was about sending a message. The revolution had begun. Across France, people rose up, destroying symbols of the old order and demanding a new way of life. But the anger wasn't just directed at the system, it was directed at the monarchy, and especially at Marie Antoinette. She was seen as the face of everything wrong with France, extravagant, foreign, and uncaring. As the revolution gained momentum, the Palace of Versailles, the lavish residence of the French monarchy, became a target. In October 1789, a crowd of thousands, led mostly by women, marched from Paris to Versailles. They were furious about the price of bread and demanded that the royal family move to Paris so they could be watched more closely. The mob broke into the palace, forcing Marie Antoinette to flee to her bedroom as angry protesters stormed the halls. In the end, the royal family had no choice but to leave. They were taken to the Tuileries Palace, a royal residence in Paris where they lived under constant surveillance, essentially as prisoners of the revolution. At the Tuileries, Marie Antoinette tried to hold on to her role as queen. She worked behind the scenes, writing letters to foreign powers, asking for help to restore the monarchy's authority. To her, she was protecting her family and her crown. But to the people, it looked like betrayal. Rumors spread that she was plotting against France, feeding the growing hatred toward her. Her efforts to maintain royal power only made her more of a target. This was a turning point. The revolution was no longer just about reform, it was about tearing down the monarchy entirely. Marie Antoinette, once celebrated for her beauty and charm, was now the most hated woman in France. The people wanted change, and they believed she stood in the way. But as the revolution gathered speed, it became clear that the monarchy's days were numbered, and so were hers. By 1792, the revolution had reached its boiling point. The monarchy, once seen as untouchable, was officially abolished, and the French Republic was declared. This wasn't the work of just one person, it was the National Convention, a powerful assembly of revolutionaries who had taken control of France. Made up of radical groups like the Jacobins and the Girondins, they represented a complete break from the old regime. The convention's goal was clear: to end centuries of monarchy and establish a government where power rested with the people, or at least, that was the promise. For the royal family, this was the end of their rule and the beginning of their captivity. They were moved to the Temple, a medieval fortress in Paris that became their prison. Life there was grim, a far cry from the grandeur of Versailles. Stripped of their titles, they were no longer King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette, but referred to simply as Citizen Louis Capet and Widow Capet. Louis XVI had never been a natural ruler. Unlike his predecessors, he lacked confidence and decisiveness. His reign was marked by indecision, particularly during moments of crisis. He preferred hunting and craftsmanship. He was known for making locks over the demands of kingship. But what Louis lacked in authority, he made up for with good intentions. He genuinely wanted to help his people but was overwhelmed by the mounting debt, poor harvests, and the growing unrest that defined his reign. These weaknesses, combined with the pressures of the revolution, sealed his fate. In January 1793, the revolution took its most dramatic turn yet. Louis XVI was put on trial for treason. The charges painted him as a traitor to the people, conspiring with foreign powers to restore his rule. The trial was swift, and the verdict was inevitable. On January 21st, Louis was executed by guillotine. The once powerful king was now gone, leaving Marie Antoinette alone to face her fate. Her grief was immense, but her own trial loomed. By October 1793, it was Marie Antoinette's turn. The charges against her were heavy: treason, conspiring against the Republic, and even a vile accusation of incest with her young son. That particular accusation struck a nerve. In court, she stood tall, addressing the crowd with an emotional plea: "I appeal to all mothers here. Can you believe this?" Her words moved many, but it wasn't enough to sway the outcome. Her trial, like her husband's, was a foregone conclusion. She was found guilty. Despite the humiliation and the relentless propaganda against her, Marie Antoinette carried herself with dignity throughout the trial. Once seen as a symbol of royal excess, she became, in her final moments, a figure of quiet strength. She refused to beg for mercy or show fear, facing her accusers with composure. Her journey from the lavish halls of Versailles to the grim courtroom of the Revolution was complete. She was no longer just a queen but a symbol of both the decadence that fueled the revolution and the resilience of a woman caught in its storm. The revolution had stripped her of everything, but in the process, it revealed her humanity. Her final chapter would play out on the guillotine, but in the eyes of many, her story had already become more than just her own. It was a reflection of France itself, its anger, its pain, and its transformation. Marie Antoinette's final days were spent in the Conciergerie, a grim and damp prison in the heart of Paris. The conditions were harsh. Her small cell was cold, dimly lit, and infested with rats. She was watched constantly by guards, with no privacy and barely enough food to survive. Her health began to fail, but even in these dire circumstances, she held herself with quiet dignity. As her execution drew closer, Marie Antoinette wrote farewell letters to her children and loved ones. Her words were filled with heartbreak and regret, but also love and resilience. She begged her children to forgive her and to remain united, even as their world crumbled around them. These letters revealed a side of her that few had seen before, a mother stripped of her crown, writing not as a queen, but as a grieving parent. On October 16, 1793, her final journey began. She was led from her cell, dressed in a simple white gown, her hair shorn short. The once glamorous queen was now unrecognizable. The streets of Paris were filled with people eager to witness the event. She was taken to the guillotine, a device created during the Revolution to ensure quick and equal execution for all. To the revolutionaries, it symbolized justice; to the condemned, it was a symbol of fear and inevitability. As she walked to the scaffold, the crowd jeered, but Marie Antoinette held her head high. She climbed the steps calmly, her composure unshaken. When she accidentally stepped on the executioner's foot, she spoke her final words, "Pardon me, sir, I meant not to do it." Moments later, the blade fell, ending her life. The crowd erupted, but for those who had seen her final moments, a different image lingered, one of quiet strength and dignity in the face of death. Marie Antoinette's journey from the luxury of Versailles to the guillotine was complete. She was no longer just a queen, she had become a symbol of a world swept away by revolution, a reminder of both its fury and its humanity. Marie Antoinette's life was a story of extremes. She began as a young Austrian princess, full of promise, marrying into one of the most powerful monarchies in the world. Today, Marie Antoinette's legacy is complicated. To some, she remains a cautionary tale of excess and privilege. To others, she is a tragic figure, swept up in forces far beyond her control. Either way, her life and death continue to fascinate, offering lessons about power, perception, and the human cost of revolution. If you've been captivated by Marie Antoinette's story, there's so much more to uncover. Subscribe to our channel to explore the untold stories of history's most fascinating figures, where we dig deep into their lives, their choices, and the legacies they leave behind. The past is full of lessons and mysteries waiting to be uncovered. And leave a comment, let's know what you think about this story.